ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
Hare Krishna. We are very fortunate to have with us His Grace Nimai Lila Prabhu. I'll give an introduction of Prabhuji. Prabhuji is a head philosophy teacher at the Govardhan School of Yoga at Iskcon, Govardhan Eco Village. He runs various courses on the yoga philosophy and mindful living, both online and residential at GV. He is known by his students for his ability to convey complex philosophical topics in a simple to understand way. His areas of expertise include Yoga Sutras, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, mind and meditation, and Yoga Nidra. He is also a faculty at the Bhaktivedanta Vidyapeetham, a traditional Vedic school at JV. He teaches Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he is an avid reader. His other interests include the field of ecology and sustainability, where he has been a distinguished speaker at various national and international forums. So he is invited in 2015 to the Emerging Leaders Climate Change Convergence in Rome, Italy, along with 100 other delegates from world over. The year 2019, he was voted amongst the most influential sustainability leaders in India. So Prabhuji holds a master degree in electrical engineering from IISc, Bangalore, and he worked at L&T and Tata Motors. So we are very fortunate to have Prabhuji's association. So let us welcome Prabhuji by loudly chanting once the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much for inviting me for today's morning class. I'd like to seek the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas, especially His Grace Nimai Prabhu. Even last time I was fortunate to serve Prabhuji. I was able to speak something and Prabhuji empowered me to speak something. Request for your empowerment once again to speak in glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we are discussing Canto 4, chapter number 16, entitled Praise of King Prithu by the Professional Reciters. And we are continuing with text number 26. This is how the verse goes. Tatra tatra girastasta iti vishruta vikramaha shoshyati atma shrita gathaha prithu parakramaha tatra tatra girastasta iti vishruta vikramaha shoshyati atma shrita gathaha prithu parakramaha tatra tatra girastasta iti vishruta vikramaha shoshyati atma shrita gathaha prithu parakramaha. Tatra tatra girastasta शोषति आत्माश्रिता गाथाः पृथु पराक्रमः तत्र तत्र गिरस्तास्त इति विश्रुत विक्रमः शोष्यति आत्माश्रिता गाथाः पृथु पृथु पराक्रमः तत्र तत्र गिरस्तास्त इति विश्रुतविक्रमः शोष्यति आत्माश्रिता गाथाः पृथु पृथु पराक्रमः. माताजी, तत्र तत्र गिरस्तास्त इति विश्रुतविक्रमः शोष्यति आत्माश्रिता गाथाः पृथु पृथु पराक्रमः. What word meaning? Tatra tatra, here and there. Giraha, words. Tah tah, many, various. Iti, thus. Vishruta vikramaha, he whose chivalrous activities are widely reputed. Shoshyati, will hear. Atma ashritaha, about himself. Gathaha, songs, narrations. Prituhu, King Prithu. Prithu parakramaha, distinctly powerful. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. In this way, when the chivalrous activities of King Prithu come to be known to the people in general, King Prithu will always hear about himself and his uniquely powerful activities. Purport. To artificially advertise oneself and thus enjoy a so-called reputation is a kind of conceit. Prithu Maharaj was famous amongst the people because of his chivalrous activities. He did not have to advertise himself artificially. One's factual reputation cannot be covered. Om Ajnanattimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vancha Kalpa Tarurbhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we are continuing with this wonderful chapter, very interesting chapter. For some of us who are not used to this side of Vedic culture, we may be wondering what the hell is happening here. Right? Just imagine yourself, right? Somebody starts glorifying you. What's your good name, Prabhu? Jagdish Hari Prabhu. Yes, of course. Nice to meet you again. So imagine Jagdish Prabhu, somebody starts glorifying you, left, right and center, in front of everyone, in an audience like this. How will you feel? Embarrassed? Okay, anybody else has a different feeling? Yes, Prabhu, how will you feel? Externally we try to be, okay, can you explain? What? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Externally, how will you feel, and internally, how will you feel? Externally, we feel embarrassed, and internally, Internally you, yeah. Please, we want to hear this in the mic. This is very important for our discussion.
He is the only devotee who has known me very properly.
Yes.
Yes.
Only this person knows the truth, the absolute truth. Okay. Anybody else has a different response to this? Yes, Prabhu. कुछ तो गड़बड़ है, अति भक्ति चोरर लक्षण. This person wants to exploit me, right? Very good, actually, very nice. This also we go through, right? So actually, if any of us we feel uncomfortable when somebody glorifies us, sorry to say this, it is just a symptom of our depressed ego. The moment, like Prabhu very candidly expressed, right, that externally I may at least put up a show that, I'm a little embarrassed or I don't want this, right? The very fact that every time we are uncomfortable when some glorification comes our way, it is because deep down somewhere we want that glorification, but due to certain external etiquette or whatever, right, we may feel uncomfortable about it, or we pretend to be uncomfortable. It's just a sign of, and we all have it, at least I have it, I can openly say about that, right? The other response somebody may have is, yes, you're right. Yeah, your glorification is right. Right? That is a sign of inflated ego. Right? When Hiranyakashipu was glorified, you're like, yeah, why so less? Tell me more. Right? That is a sign of inflated ego. But when the glorification comes your way, if you are able to be grateful for what has come, right, that shows the sign of humility, which is not so easy. Only a person who is genuinely humble will be able to accept glorification from others, right? And this is a very deep discussion. We'll try to throw more insights on this, right? So, as we understand, the popular definition of humility. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but it's about thinking of yourself less. What does it mean? Humility does not mean to think that I am a lesser person, right? But rather, even while thinking of yourself as a lesser person, you are thinking more about yourself. I am more fallen. There's a nice Prabhupada letter in this regard. This one time a disciple, he wrote a letter to Prabhupada. Oh Prabhupada, I am the most fallen. I am most fallen than the fallen. And he wrote this long letter. Prabhupada replies, you are most nothing. Right? Because by thinking, that's how the ego works. If I am not the number one at the top, I have to be number one at the bottom. Somewhere I have to experience that number oneness. Right? This is what I mentioned earlier as a depressed ego. Right? So this is a very important principle. And Prithu Maharaj here is demonstrating real humility in accepting this glorification. Right? And these professional bards, these reciters who are glorifying, that was a very important part of Vedic culture. Now for many of us, this whole chapter may seem like a bewildering chapter. On one level we are saying that Amanina Manadena, and what is Prithu Maharaj doing here, sitting happily on the throne, and there are professional people, and these people are also paid. These people are paid. So imagine if I didn't, but imagine if you come to know that I bribed Prabhuji with lot of Mahaprasad and said, Prabhu, that's why I read a nice glorification about me before the class. What will you all think about me? This is kind of a cheap attention seeker or glorification seeker. You will lose your respect towards me. But here the king is actually paying some people. Their salary, their official occupation is, they are the reciters, professional. That's the word professional reciters Prabhupada uses. It is not some suddenly, like Kunti Maharani is glorifying the Lord out of sudden outpour of Bhakti Bhav. No, it is not like that. These people are professional reciters. They get paid for doing that. In their resume, that is what they write. Who are you? I am the person who glorifies the king. Right? Why is the Vedic culture having something like this when we is talking about, it's about developing humility and so on, right? So to understand this, we have to understand little bit about the mood of Kshatriyas. Somehow, unfortunately today, we don't see good examples of good Kshatriyas or the Kshatriya spirit. Therefore, such things may seem so culturally distant for us to understand this concept, right? So, what does it mean to be or we can extend that concept from Kshatriya to a sense of individuality also, right? So, what basically such reciters do is they encourage the king. And the king, one of the important qualities that a Kshatriya needs to have is a dhriti, determination, right? So, if you remember the qualities of a Kshatriya that Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter, Shauryam, heroism, Teja, his power, valor, Dhriti, determination, Daksham, Yuddhecha, Pi Apalayanam, you should not run away from the battle, Danam, Ishvara Bhavascha, Kshatram, Karma, Swabhavam. So this Dhriti, the determination, is a very important aspect that a Kshatriya needs to have. For anybody in the I remember this chapter, Jai Shri Gaunitai Bhagavan ki Jai, Shri Radha Madan Mohan Dev ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Baldev Sudramaya ki Jai. I remember many years ago when the first batch of GBC College for Leadership started, somehow in the place where I stay, Govardhan Eco Village, we were hosting this whole college. So many leaders of Iskcon globally had come there, and guess which section of Bhagavatam they decided to discuss? This section, Prithu Maharaj section. Because Prithu Maharaj section is a fantastic example of how a leader should be, right? And many of us, when you read this chapter, you may think, oh, this is only for the leaders. It's not like that. Each and every one of us, we are leaders in our own right, right? If you are not leading anyone, at least there is one follower that you have. Who is that, Prabhu? Yes. At least you have to lead your own life. So we have to show some level of leadership over our own mind and senses and our own body, right? So what is this important principle here is this principle of developing some sense of self-worth. Now, this word, maybe we should use an Indian word to, like in all our languages, Hindi, Telugu, right? We have two words, Swabhiman and there is Abhiman. What is the difference between these two words? Yes, Prabhu, Jagdish Prabhu. Swabhiman is genuine and Abhiman is not genuine. No, whoever has Abhiman, they are genuinely Abhiman they have. They are not faking it. Yes, Prabhu.
Self-respect and Abhiman is not respecting others. We are showing our ego to others.
So, Swabhiman is self-respect and Abhiman is pride, ego, as you said, right? Now, we see these two are not the same. Should devotees have self-respect? Yes or no? Yes. So, how is that different from pride? We need to understand this difference. If you really want to become steady in our own spiritual practices, especially dealing with this outside world these days or dealing with our own internal world these days, right? We have to be very clear about this. So, deep down, we all need an identity to function in this world, right? Now, identity is not the same as ego, right? We are not using the word in that context, right? When you get carried away with your identities, then it becomes an ego. But we all need some sense of identity in this world. In fact, all the experiences that you have in your life are defined by your identity, right? Like I'll give you a good example. So, Jagdish Prabhu, if India wins cricket match, World Cup final, will you be happy or sad? Happy. Okay. If India loses the cricket match, will you be happy or sad? Sad. But you know what's the right answer? That is a trick question and you fell for it. Right? But okay, but thank you for being genuine. But somebody who's some China or some other random country where they don't play that sport, what is cricket, what is World Cup, what is winning, losing cricket match, they will not have any idea about it. So see, because we rooted our identity around a particular nationality or around a particular sport, right? So your whole life experiences are shaped based on that. Many times we think our attachments and aversions define our life experiences, right? But you have to go one level deeper. In fact, if I may go one level forward and then back, what defines our attachments and aversions? Yeah, little, but immediately, how do you get attached to something? What kind of an experience? What kind of past experience? Good experience, right? It is described, Sukha Anushayi Ragaha. What follows Sukha is Raga, attachment. And likewise, Dukkha Anushayi Dveshaha. What follows Dukkha is Dvesha. So if you have a bad experience with something, if you experience dukkha with something, you naturally develop aversion towards it. If you experience pleasure with something, you naturally develop some attachment to it. But this I'm quoting from our Brahmaji's at the time of creation. He talks about his 5 kinds of ignorances. Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Dvesha, Abhinivesha. I'm quoting from that section of Bhagavatam. So he talks about, okay, Raga and Dvesha are fine, but even what is happiness and what is pleasure, many times it is defined, it is not an absolute principle. It is defined based on our identity. Like in this scenario, just that your identity as belonging to a particular nation defined an experience of happiness as a result of that match. Right? Or I'll give you another example. So let us say some big donor has come and they said, I am very happy with Iskcon Hyderabad. I want to donate 1 crore rupees donation. So immediately the temple management calls all of you, all the wonderful Vaishnavas who are serving here, and they say, how should we spend this 1 crore rupees donation? Right? So one Prabhuji will say that, we should use it for youth preaching, because finally our preaching is the essence. So we should set up more youth preaching centers. We should probably build a whole guest house just for youth, right? So somebody will say that. Then immediately Andar Prabhuji will say, but Prabhu, Mahaprabhu's movement is what movement? Sankirtan movement, right? So we should expand, we should contribute all this donation in Sankirtan and expand Sankirtan. We should get 2-3 Sankirtan buses and expand our Sankirtan activities. Right? Then immediately another Prabhuji, he's the most practical person. Prabhu, youth preaching is fine, Sankirtan is fine, but if there is no prasadam seva, what will your youth preaching happen? What will your Sankirtan happen? We should expand the kitchen. Right? We should set up, free Annadanam seva. We should have more. Right? Like this, so many ideas will keep coming. Right? Now, the moment the person gives an idea, so what is happening inside your head? This person rejected my idea. When the third person is saying, kitchen seva, prasadam seva, the first person will think, hey, he rejected youth preaching. Indirectly, he rejected me. Because at that moment, your identity became reinforced as, strengthened as, I am a youth preacher. Somebody else's identity became, I am a Sankirtan leader. I am a kitchen in charge. And this is how the mind tricks us. Because our identity. The moment, these identities, they solidify, it creates difference of opinion, and that's how the whole raga, dvesha, the whole cycle follows after that. Right? So, in fact, all the problems that we face in our life is due to disharmony at the level of identity, period. every problem that you face in your life, somewhere some identity of yours is triggered, and that is what creates problems. Right? Think about it. Think about what in the recent past, in the last 1 week or last 1 day, if you had any painful experience in your life. Right? And when you experience that pain, just step back and see which identity that I am holding on to is triggering that pain. Right? So you will notice that there is something that you are very strongly identifying yourself as. Right? Now just imagine that whole, going back to our 1 crore rupee donation meeting. Right? Imagine after that you've been told now you go and serve in say Iskcon Hyderabad. Right? Right there, just like across the street literally, or whatever, on 10-20 minutes whatever away from here. But the moment your identity changes from Iskcon Hyderabad to Iskcon Hyderabad, whatever conflict that agitated your mind suddenly sublimates. Because your identity is no more that I am the Sankirtan leader here, I am the youth preaching leader here, I am the kitchen in charge here. And that person who rejected me, he rejected your idea, but who rejected me, with whom you developed some animosity, suddenly you're like, why was I angry at this person for such a long time? Why was I holding that grudge in my heart for so long? Right? It just sublimates. Why? Just suddenly your identity shifted and all the things centered around it, they just shift. Right? So this idea of identity creating the problem is very important. Now, you may think that, oh, because identities create problems, we have to give up all identities, right? Sarvapadhir Vinirmuktam, we have to give up all our identities, right? Yes or no? It's a trick question. Who says no, raise your hand. Who says yes, raise your hand. There are only two options. Who is confused, raise your hand. Okay. Yes, Prabhu? Yeah, we give up. So yes, so the idea is you cannot give up identities in this world. This is a very important point. In the Chaitanya Charitamrit, in Madhya Lila chapter 24, when Mahaprabhu is explaining the 64 explanation of Atmaram verse, 61 explanation of Atmaram verse, the word Atma very nicely Mahaprabhu he defines. Atma Shabda Brahma Deha Mana Yatna Dhriti Buddhi Swabhava Esata Artha Prapti. The word Atma he defines as 7 words. Right? Brahma, the absolute truth. Deha, the body. Mana, the mind. Yatna, prayatna, the efforts, the endeavors that we make. Dhriti, again the word dhriti, our determination. Buddhi, intelligence, and swabhava, our nature. Right? All these are the meanings of the word Atma. Many times you use the word Atma means just the soul, right? But no, a better translation would be the word self. Right? I'll give a very simple example. Can you give me a sentence starting with I am? Any sentence. I am. Sorry, Prabhu. You are Atma. Okay. So is that how you introduce yourself? Like you go to some donor's house or some youth program. आप कौन है? मैं आत्मा हूं. Right? You will say you are from Iskcon Hyderabad. Okay. What else? Anything else connected with I am? Any other sentence you can make with I am? I am a brahmachari. Anything else? I am. Prabhu? I am servant of Krishna. Okay. Anything else? I am. Prabhu? Okay. Good. Okay. Good. Is that the only context in which when you are identifying yourself you use the word I am? Anything else you can think of? I am. Okay, let me give you a real scenario. What if I continue the class till 10 o'clock? What will you say, Prabhu? I am hungry. Yes. Okay. Another example of I am. You are busy. Very good. I am feeling sleepy. Very good. I am full. Cool. Okay. You are a cool Atma. Brahma Bhuta Prasanna Atma. Okay. What else? I am I am getting late. Very good. Right? Okay, so let's analyze these statements one by one. So first, I am Atma. Right? So Prabhu is a totally different level. So that is the meaning of the word Brahma, the soul, at the soul level. Right? So you can say, for example, I am Indian, I am so and so. So these are identities centered around your body. Or I am short, I am tall. Whom are you referring to the I there? The body. Sometimes you will say, somebody said, I am sleepy. Does the soul ever sleep? No. Does the body ever sleep? Think and answer. Body sleeps? Body sleeps? Body sleeps? Okay, if the body sleeps, then how is it that when somebody calls out your name, you wake up? Huh? Subtle body is active. Okay? Mind is awake. So, actually, when you take, okay, let me give another example. All day you are doing lot of seva. And at the end of the day you say, oh Prabhu, I am dead. Right? So when you say I am dead, who is speaking? If you are dead, you cannot speak, right? Do dead people speak? Prabhu, anyone? Have you ever seen a dead body speak? So who is speaking? What do you mean by I am dead? Who's there? Who's dead there? Huh? So between the body and mind, you have your life energy, life force, prana. That prana is what that is dead. So when Prabhupada or Mahaprabhu, when this verse says yatna, prayatna, efforts are done at the pranic level. So when you say I am dead, the I you are referring to is the prana or the yatna, the efforts part. Right? Somebody will say, oh, I am so bored. Or somebody will say, Prabhu, yeah, you know, you'll say, for example, you'll say, I am exploding. Prabhu, after your class, I am exploding. So who's exploding? Mind. Right? Because it could be, exploding can be a both positive or a negative term. It's such a boring or a complicated class that my mind is exploding. Or it could also be like, you know, you got so many ideas during that class, right? That would be at an intelligence level, of course, right? That exploding can be both mind and intelligence. So basically what I was trying to convey is the same word I, without us knowing it in our language, we use all the 7 definitions of the self. Right? So when the consciousness expresses itself in the material domain, it expresses itself through these different channels of body, the life airs, the mind, the intelligence, right? Or the dhriti, the determination. This determination comes from that sense of identity. The reason why I was emphasizing you need an identity to function in this world is because without that identity you cannot be determined. The fact that at some level we all carry an identity that I am a practicing devotee, right? I am trying to be a Gaudiya Vaishnava, I am trying to be a follower of Srila Prabhupada. Because we carry that identity, that gives us certain level of determination that I have to follow certain standards, I have to follow certain routine, practice certain sadhana. When our identities get diluted, your determination also gets diluted. That is why when Asat Sangha is emphasized, don't associate too much with Asat Sangha. What does Sangha do? Sangha defines our identity. It shapes our identity. So when your identities get diluted, slowly your value systems also get diluted. So this having a sense of identity is very, very important. Right? So here, specifically, Prithu Maharaj, as a Kshatriya, he needs to demonstrate a particular identity. And what was that? If you remember, we quoted the Gita verse, the last quality, Shauryam Tejo Diti Daksham, Yudhecha Piya Palayanam, Danam, Ishvara Bhava. What does the word Ishvara Bhava mean? Haji? Controllership. Guess what Srila Prabhupada translates it as? Prabhupada translates, anybody remembers that section? Sense of? Lording over? No. Anybody remembers 18th chapter? I think text 45 or something. Prabhupada translates Ishvara Bhava as leadership. Specifically, he writes, the nature of leadership. Now, this is a very, very deep principle here. Right? For a Kshatriya to be a leader, they need to experience some sense of control, dominion over something. That is the very nature of a Kshatriya. Without that, a Kshatriya cannot function. If a Kshatriya does not have an identity, Kshatraya, to redeem the people from their pain, Trayate, to relieve oneself or to liberate oneself from Kshat, from pain, right? So, if I don't feel that this person belongs to me, I have a sense of control over that person. Control, the word also you need to understand, not in the modern word of control, but a sense of responsibility. If these people are under my control, under my subordination, under my protection, if that feeling is not there, a Kshatriya will not develop the motivation to actually protect them from suffering. This is the beautiful understanding of the whole Vedic culture of protection and control was that. It is not some sense of artificial, overpowering people, putting them under your subjugation, but rather it was a sense of taking charge of people's lives in a way. Okay, before that also, it's a very beautiful definition of leadership that I recently heard in one nice lecture. They were quoting a former American president, Eisenhower. He says, leadership is the art of getting what you want done by others, which they want to do. I repeat, leadership is the art of getting what you want done through someone else because they want to do it. Think about it, it's a very, very deep thing. It's not about exploitation. The first part may sound like exploitation, getting what you want done by someone else. That may seem like exploitation, but that someone else that you chose wants to actually do it. Or in other words, such a leader exhibits a sense of dominion and control and assigns work, not because the work has to be done, but also because that person finds their sense of self-expression and their own worth in life because of doing that activity. Right? This is how Srila Prabhupada worked. If you carefully see, right, Prabhupada never forced, if you see the whole expansion of the explosion, the Hare Krishna explosion, devotees wanted to go and preach. Devotees wanted to start bus parties, devotees wanted to start Rath Yatras, devotees wanted, the whole book distribution. If you see the entire history of our movement, Prabhupada very expertly engaged and facilitated. These two things, that make a good leader. They have to engage, which means in engagement there is some push that the leader has to give. At the same time needs to facilitate an individual's self-expression. Right? And that's why Prabhupada would always say that devotional service is always individual, spontaneous and voluntary. And the leader's role is to facilitate these three things. Right? So this is what is Ishvara Bhava that the Kshatriyas carried in the Vedic time. And what is the advantage of having the Kshatriya Bhav, this Ishvara Bhav? Right? First, Prabhupada mentions in the first canto of Bhagavatam, he says, it creates a sense of accountability. Prabhupada is very strongly, he condemns the democratic systems over monarchical system. In monarchy, what happens? Because of that accountability of that family lineage, right? You are the descendant of the Raghukula, you are the descendant of Ishwaku, you are the descendant of Dasharath, you are the descendant of Lord Ram. What kind of a king you should be? So because of their identity with their lineage, it subtly puts their internal moral compass in line. Right? But today, in democracy, who cares? 5 years term, somehow I made it. Now let me maximize my gain. In the 5 years, I will earn for my 5 generations ahead. That is the attitude of democratic leaders. Because they lose that sense of accountability. So that is the first advantage. When this Ishvara Bhava is there, it creates a sense of accountability because of family lineage. Second advantage of the Ishvara Bhava is, it creates legacy and not blind following. Very nice story that comes in, many of you might have heard this in Ramayana. When Dashrath Maharaj decides to coronate Lord Ram, he calls all his ministers and he says, okay, I am planning to make Ram the next king. What is your opinion? And everybody starts glorifying, wow, this is the best decision you ever took in your life. This, that, Ram is so good. At some point, Dashrath becomes depressed. Are, my ministers are so eager to replace me. I ruled for so long. Am I a bad king? Right? So then, Acharyas explain, no, Dashrath, how he reconciled himself, that actually in every leader's life, there are 3 other leaders. Without these 3 leaders in your life, you cannot be a leader. The first leader is the leader above you, who trained you. Somebody is superior to you. Second leader is the leader who is equal to you, who can very unhesitatingly just barge into your room or your house and give you open feedback. Right? Because especially as you go higher in the ranks, you lose this opportunity. You get disconnected from people who can openly give you feedback. So you need another leader as your peer who can very wholeheartedly, genuinely, out of concern, can come and give you correction. Right? The third leader is a leader that you create. Right? Where you pass on your legacy to someone else by training them. Like how somebody trained you, you have to train the next generation. So this is when these 3 leaders are there in your life, one above, one equal, one below you, that is what makes one a leader. And Dashrath he reconciled himself thinking, oh, I created a great leader in the form of a king, in the form of Lord Ram. So it is not my disqualification, actually it is my glorification that they have accepted Lord Ram, unanimously. Right? And this is a very important aspect about creating legacy and not blind following. The third thing that happens when a leader has his Ishvara Bhav, the leader has its self-worth, it will create grounded followers. When I use the word grounded, means that sometimes if the leader himself is insecure, what will end up happening is, to cover up for their insecurity, they will only surround themselves with sycophants. That is what happened later on in the Vedic culture also. It is not that Prithu Maharaj needed these professional reciters, but he encouraged them so that his glories can be known to people, and therefore that sense of command and respect can be inspired among people. But over a period of time, this culture degraded into sycophancy. Like chamcha giris. If you know what that, understand the word chamcha, right? What do you call it in Telugu? Chamcha ko kya bolte Telugu mein? Everybody understand, na? Butter, makhan lagana, butter lagana, like that. So if you create such leaders, surround them with chamchas. Classical example is that of Duryodhan. Duryodhan only encouraged his chamchas to be around him. They have to agree with whatever he says. On the other hand, Yudhishthir, Pandavas used to fight so much among themselves. If you read Mahabharata, Bhima was so vocal about Yudhishthir's decisions. Sometimes when Arjuna would, point flaws with some of Yudhishthir's decisions. But still, that's what makes Yudhishthir a great king, a great leader. Right? Because he never surrounded himself with sycophants. So when the leader is insecure, they will not allow that individuals to grow into who they want to be, where they can naturally express themselves. They are always living under a fear that, what will the leader say? Whenever I use the word leader, understand It could be a parent in a family. It could be boss in your office. It could be you with your youth preaching, your boys whom you are preaching to, right? Or the head of a family, or any place where you are having some people under your control. This principle is applicable like that. So this is the important one. When a leader himself is grounded, has a strong sense of self-worth, he will encourage every individual to grow in their own individual way. And that is how the followers also will become grounded in their own real nature, in their own identity. Otherwise, they will end up always living behind a veil. Some of you might have noticed this happens in all of us who grew up in Indian educational system. We have experience. जैसे ही teacher class में आता है, everybody becomes. As soon as teacher leaves, our real nature comes out. But I don't know if any of you had the fortune of having such good teachers in your childhood, where you genuinely respected that teacher. It's not that you are calm or you are polite or whatever, you are good boy or good girl in front of the teacher because you have to be, but because you want to be. Anybody had such good teachers in your life? Right? Maybe, your Shiksha Gurus or not even within our own spirit, you've seen, like they inspire you to be who you want to be, and that is how, you develop respect for them. That is that is how the followers also become grounded. When the leader themselves has that Ishvara Bhava and his self-worth and sense of grounding, like that, right? And in that kind of a space, such a leader creates an environment of trust, which is so important for an individual growth. Because what trust does, it helps us to remove those false veils behind which we are hiding all the time. Because somehow there's a pressure in being nice. We have to be textbook perfect devotees. So in that process, we end up sometimes now following something beyond our capacity, aspiring to follow is a good thing. But falsely imitating is a bad thing. If you are inspired by it, that's a good thing. But imitation is what is a problem. So what happens is, when you are imitating all your life, at some point, after 10 years, after 20 years, after 30 years in Krishna consciousness, you'll realize, hey, I have not changed. I am still the same person. My anarthas are still the same. You know when anarthas go away? When you remove those veils in an environment of trust. Where are these anarthas residing? They are residing in our chitta or in our subconscious mind. Our samskaras is where anarthas residing. Samskaras cannot be addressed with your conscious mind. Like right now, when we are dealing with each other, we are very calculated in our speech, right? The instincts are not our calculated responses. Anarthas reside at that instinctual layer. So when you are dealing with outsiders, or when you are dealing with in public, in your conscious space, we use our intelligence, we control it, we know what to speak, what not to speak, blah, blah, blah. But that instinct, when comes, that is where our anarthas reside. And for you to access that inner space, the chitta, that subconscious mind, you have to first dissolve your layer of your conscious mind. Because what this conscious mind does, if I may give an example, your mind is like a coconut. Coconut outer shell is hard, the inner shell is soft, right? So the impressions, our samskaras are all stored in that inner shell, chitta. And ideally we should be cleaning that, cheto darpana marjanam. But what we do? We take a cloth, clean the outer shell of the coconut and again put it back every day. The inner change is not happening. If you want to go inside, you have to dissolve that outer shell. And the outer shell only dissolves in a trustworthy space, where you are ready to shed those outer layers. Did you ever feel comfortable in the company of your best friend in Krishna consciousness, where dil khol ke baat kar sakte? You can open your heart transparently. You don't have to put up, like, you may be like a big preacher or big leader, whatever, but in front of that best friend, you can put all those public responses aside and you can be who you are. And you see, when having such deep conversations with such people, it really nourishes your heart. Because that is the time when you are really internalizing, you're addressing your internal issues and you are allowing those things to come out. Otherwise, what happens, this outer shell is also important in a sense that, like children, if you see, they are very impressionable, very transparent. What is inside is outside. If they don't like something, like sometimes children, if you go home to some new person's house, then some small child say, "Hare, why is this Prabhuji not having any hair? Why is this Prabhuji having some pilaka behind his back?" Pilaka is a choti, the shikha. Children just speak like that. What is inside their heart, they speak it out. They don't hide anything, right? But as we grow up, what happens is life gives us so many kicks. So, because of the kicks, this pain we experience in our chitta, we want to protect it. And that is how the outer shell becomes very hard and hard and hard. Right? That is how we develop these defense mechanisms to not get our chitta get affected. So that is why when people speak harshly, right? If you go on book distribution and somebody says, "Hey, we are wasting your life, go get a job." Right? If such harsh words are spoken to a child, they will immediately sit down and start crying. Because they really take it to heart. But we as adults, we are so expert in masking our feelings and emotions, right? The outer coconut shell will just protect it. That is good to survive in the outside world. But inside these walls of the temple here means the sacred space, the Sangha of Vaishnavas. What is Sangha? Sangha is that safe, trustworthy space where I can dissolve these outer shields, the outer shell of the coconut, and I can literally be myself. And in that space, you will see the Cheto Darpana Marjana will happen very effectively. And for that environment to be created, this individual, the followers need to have that sense of peaceful identity, that peaceful sense of self-worth. And that is what happens when such a Ishvara Bhava king is there, because he doesn't get offended if you comment on him. Right? The reason why such kings, such insecure kings want to keep everything under their control. You cannot say this, you cannot do this, oh, you cannot walk like this, hey, put your leg here. Why they are so much into that control? Because they themselves feel insecure. What if I don't control them? Then I have to then they will rebel against me or they will go out of my reach. Such leaders try to control by force. But a genuine leader tries to control by love or by inspiration. Right? So that space is created, and in such environment of love, every individual can grow properly without having to feel choked up. Right? And that is the great example of Prituma. When such Ishwar Bhav is there, he is not worried what you will criticize. He knows, okay, you are critical of me, I will openly accept. If there is genuinely there is something, I will try to work on it. If it is not, I will give you your space to naturally grow like that. Right? And finally, such feeling, such Ishwar Bhav, it creates such a powerful social change, because ultimately the whole Vedic model of social change is not change through governance, but change through personal transformation. I remember many years ago, I was meeting the head of the Bar Council of Maharashtra. Bar Council, all the lawyers, High Court judges who have, there is a Bar Council, which, and the head of that, he's like he should understand law really well to be head of the Bar Council. And he was appreciating, he came to our temple, he was appreciating Iskcon devotees, saying, you people are doing real social service. He says, everybody says, every time there's a problem, people say, you have to make this law, you have to make that law, right? It's easy to make laws, but who's going to enforce those laws? Like, you see, there are so many traffic rules, but you need so many traffic cops to ensure that the law is, enforced. So the whole modern world, Western world, westernized world, even India is becoming westernized. But the whole modern approach to social change is by governance and law enforcers. Right? In many Western countries, the ratio of cops to people ratio is at least 10 times higher than in India. That is why that kind of a strong governance model may work. But in countries like India, in traditional places, governance comes through individual responsibility. Because finally, society is made of individuals. If individuals at their individual level discover their individualism and their sense of responsibility, then collectively the society will function in a cohesive way. That is why Prabhupada emphasized so much on individual education. If individually everybody is trained properly, then collectively as a society we will function effectively. That is the great service that we have been given by Srila Prabhupada. That's what preaching we are trying to do, right? We are trying to create an individual training in people properly, that we are creating individual leaders so that collectively the society can function like that. So this is what is very important when that kind of, so it's a two-way thing. Externally, having a common purpose. Like here we are followers of Srila Prabhupada, we have certain, we have cast on the legacy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Having that sense of purpose creates an external sense of belonging. And having this identity that we spoke about, self-worth, identity, it creates an internal sense of belonging. And we need both. You need external belonging and internal belonging. If you don't have an internal identity, right, you will be serving, but after some time you will start feeling hollow. Main kaun hu? Who am I? You are giving classes, who am I? Every day, the 6-session course, all these courses. But after a few years, you will have your own identity crisis. Who am I? Right? And you will go into some kind of a, I don't know if do you know the meaning of the word burnout? Right? Professional burnouts. Even corporate world, people go through that. People go through a sense of burnout because externally they found sense of belonging. I like Iskcon, I like spirituality, I like following, I like serving, etc., etc. But internally they still haven't found their identity. So after a few years they will go through a burnout. Other extreme is they have such a strong sense of internal identity, but externally they are not connected. They may seem like very nice, solid, grounded, well-rooted devotees, but their social contribution will be zero. So we don't want to be that type also, right? So this is the balance. Internally, when you are grounded, externally also you can contribute very nicely. And such devotees are the best examples. They don't even have to preach. Just their mere presence, just sitting with them, talking to them, interacting with them, will say, I want to be like this person. There's so many wonderful, like one example that comes to mind is Jayananda Prabhu. If you read his biography, he didn't have to preach. He was not a preacher. But externally he had a sense of belonging. I am Prabhupada's servant. And internally he had a strong sense of identity about what my role is, what I can do, what I cannot do. He was very clear about that. And he was such a fantastic, leader in sorts, where he inspired so many people around him. People to come and just give him vegetables and fruits so that they can cook for the devotees and so on, like that. So yeah, so this is the thing that few points which I wanted to share. I'm already over time. I'll very quickly summarize what we discussed. We began by understanding the difference between self-worth and ego. And we discussed that how only when you have self-worth you can be genuinely humble. Right? And we discussed also about what is the 7 meanings of the self. And one of them is also your sense of identity that creates conviction. Because identity, it creates our experiences of life. Also identity gives a sense of conviction in what we want to do in our life. The determination comes from that. And we elaborated a lot on this principle of Ishvara Bhava. How for a Kshatriya that Ishvara Bhava is so important, and professional reciters like these are facilitating that sense of that Ishvara Bhava, that internal sense of belonging which I was saying. And we need both of them. And we discussed the advantages of having this kings who have that Ishvara Bhava. They create accountability because of their lineage, example as in monarchical systems. And such grounded leaders, they also create grounded followers. They create legacy and not blind following, right? And also create that space for a powerful social change by bringing out individuality among the citizens, and that's how collectively we become a effective society. Like that. Thank you so much for a very, very patient listening. I think we are way over time. So if anybody has any questions or comments, maybe they can take off the mic, because if devotees want to. And request, Prabhuji, if you'd like to add any corrections, any comments on. Thank you. Yeah. Right. Should we encourage any questions, or anybody has one quick question? Yes, Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank
Bol.
you for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. One clarification I wanted to check, Prabhuji. Like this internal identity, does that mean that what should be our service, like what service we like to do, or like how can we contribute to the mission? Does that what is meant by internal identity?
Yeah, Prabhu's question is that is internal identity about what kind of service I would like to do, what suits me best, etc. I will say it is even one level deeper than that. When moment you say what service I like to do, there is something about you, or there is a particular way that you would like to see yourself. You like yourself in a particular way, and in that way you will be internally peaceful and you can express yourself better, right? That identity is what you have to identify. It is not just a sense of swabhava or nature here. I am going even one level deeper than that, right? So what this sense of identity does is, in fact, your nature also you can say is an output of this, right? So for example, you will say I like to do book distribution or something, right? So you need to carry a strong sense of identity that I am a book distributor, right? It is not ego again. It is just a strong sense of internal belonging that yes, I am peaceful in that role as a book distributor. So then when somebody comes and challenges you, say you are friends, are you a student? What are you? You're a working person, right? Say you are distributing books. This happened with me once. I was there with Prabhuji when I was living in Bombay for some time. Both of us were staying the same place. And I know many of you may know or not, Prabhu is a very powerful book distributor also. So evening during the Sunday, the December time, so there's a place called Hiranandan. It's like a very, very premium elite place. So Prabhu organized book distribution. So all of us, we carried books and we went there. And I am a very reluctant book distributor. Sorry for my shameless admission of that. I never really enjoyed book distribution back then. So, and I was also a very shy person to speak, and the whole thing made me very uncomfortable actually. But somehow you cannot say no to Prabhu. He is a very, very gently, very mildly he would push us and he would take us for book distribution. So then my office also used to be close by, and somehow at a book distribution stall, my colleagues came there. Can you imagine? Shock of their life. As much as I was stunned to see them, they were also stunned to see me. Like, what is this guy doing here? Because in office, I was more in my researcher profile and very introvert kind of, and they suddenly started, ye book kyun bech raha hai? Right? So, my way at that point, my way out of that and the situation was this identity. I said, let me just strengthen my identity. I said, okay, I'm book distributor now. So, what's wrong? So, attack is the best form of defense, bolte na. I went, they were just walking in front, it was like a 10 seconds of awkward silence. They were like this, I was like that. Then I said, do you want Bhagavad Gita? Right? So, at that level, I was confused between my two identities as an office, what a professional identity that I had, and my identity as a book distributor. So then when I said I kept that aside and I became very strongly rooted in my identity as I'm a book distributor. I take pride in book distributing Prabhupada's books, right? So when that came in, then naturally I became peaceful and I was able to approach them and get over my inhibitions that way, like that. Okay. All right. So let's conclude here. Thank you all so much for your patient listening. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavat Mahapuran ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada